Lena Carter sips her gin and tonic in first class, the plane soaring into the starry night when Travis Monroe charges up, his face a mask of contempt, barking, "Stand up now! You don't belong here!" Passengers gasp, the cabin trembling. As turbulence hits, drinks splashing everywhere. Lena meets his glare cool as ice, while Travis smirks, clueless she owns horizon skies. The plane jolts again, and he snarls, "Move, or I'll make you." What's her play? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, smash that like button and subscribe for more epic showdowns. Lena Carter sits rigid in her plush first-class seat, the gin and tonic still cold in her hand, its lime slice bobbing as the plane steadies after the turbulence. Her navy blazer hugs her frame, crisp and tailored, a stark contrast to the chaos. Travis Monroe just unleashed. His voice still echoes in her ears, sharp and venomous, cutting through the hum of the engines 35,000 feet above the California desert. She takes a slow breath, her dark eyes narrowing as she watches him strut back down the aisle, his polished shoes clicking against the floor, his smirk wide enough to split his face. The other passengers, a mix of suits and vacationers, shift, uncomfortably, some craning their necks to gawk, others pretending not to notice. Lena sets her glass on the tray table, the clink of ice against crystal barely audible over the whispers starting to ripple through the cabin. She knows what's coming. She's felt this before, the weight of eyes sizing her up, deciding she doesn't fit. But this time it's different. This time she's not just a passenger. She's the one who signs the checks for this whole damn airline. Travis spins on his heel, his blonde hair slicked back, his uniform pristine, and marches back to her row. His lips curl as he looms over her, blocking the soft glow of the overhead light. "I said stand up," he snaps, louder this time, his voice carrying to the back of the cabin. "You think you can just sit here like you own the place?" The irony stings, but Lena keeps her face smooth, her pulse steady. She reaches into her pocket, pulls out her boarding pass and holds it out, her manicured nails glinting under the dim cabin lights. "Check it," she says, her tone even, like she's handing a cashier a coupon. Travis snatches it, his fingers brushing hers with deliberate force, and scans it with a handheld device. The beep confirms it's legit. First class, seat 3A, paid in full. His jaw tightens, but his eyes flicker with something darker, something that says he doesn't care what the machine tells him. He shoves the pass back into her hand, crumpling it slightly, and leans in close, his breath hot with coffee and spite. "Doesn't matter," he hisses, low enough that only she can hear. "Someone like you shouldn't be up here." The words land like a slap, raw and unfiltered, and for a split second, Lena's fingers twitch, itching to ball into a fist. But she doesn't flinch. She's faced worse than this punk in a polyester vest. She's built an empire from nothing, clawed her way up through boardrooms full of men who looked at her the same way Travis does now. She tilts her head, meeting his stare, and says, "That's not your call." Her voice is calm, a blade wrapped in velvet, but it only fuels his fire. He straightens up, puffing out his chest, and turns to the cabin, his arms spread like he's addressing a crowd at a rally. "Folks, we've got a situation here," he announces, his tone dripping with mock concern. "Seems there's been a mix-up with the seating." A few passengers murmur, their heads nodding as if he's solving some great mystery. Lena catches a woman in a silk scarf 2 rows back whispering to her husband, her lips forming the words, "Probably a mistake." The husband nods, his glasses fogging slightly as he exhales. Travis pivots back to Lena, his grin widening, and gestures to another attendant hovering near the galley. "Karen, get over here," he barks. Karen, a wiry woman with a tight bun and a pinched face, scurries over, her clipboard clutched like a shield. She glances at Lena, then at Travis, her eyes darting between them as if she's trying to read the room. "What's the problem?" she asks, her voice high and nervous. Travis jabs a thumb at Lena. "This one's in the wrong spot. Booking error. We need her moved." Karen hesitates, flipping through her clipboard, but Travis doesn't wait for her to check. "Now, Karen!" he snaps, and she jumps, nodding quickly. "Of course, right away," she stammers, avoiding Lena's gaze. Lena feels the heat rising in her chest, the familiar burn of being dismissed, but she keeps it locked down. She stands, smoothing her blazer, her movements deliberate, refusing to let them see her rattled. "This is unnecessary," she says, loud enough for the nearby rows to hear. "My ticket's valid. You're making a scene for no reason." Travis chuckles, a dry, grating sound, and steps closer, his shadow falling over her. "Oh, I've got plenty of reason," he mutters, his eyes raking over her like she's something he scraped off his shoe. "Let's go." He grabs her elbow, his grip tight, and starts pulling her toward the aisle. Lena yanks her arm free, her heels digging into the carpet, and picks up her leather briefcase from the floor. "I'll walk myself," she says, her voice cutting through the hum of the cabin. Karen trails behind, clutching her clipboard tighter, while Travis leads the way, his stride cocky, like he's escorting a criminal. The first-class passengers watch, some with pity, others with smug approval. A man in a pinstripe suit mutters, "About time," under his breath, and Lena catches it, her jaw clenching. They pass the curtain separating first class from economy, the air growing thicker with the smell of stale coffee and sweat. Travis stops at row 27, a cramped middle seat wedged between a snoring teenager and a woman clutching a crying baby. "Here you go," he says, gesturing grandly, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Your new throne." Lena stares at the seat, the torn fabric, the sticky armrest, and feels the weight of every eye in the cabin on her back. She sets her briefcase down, but before she can slide it under the seat, Travis snatches it from her hands. "Not so fast," he says, holding it up like a trophy. "This looks expensive. Could be a security risk. I'll hold on to it." Lena's eyes flash, her calm cracking for the first time. "That's mine," she says, stepping toward him, but he backs away, shaking his head. "Airline policy," he lies, his grin wicked. "Don't worry, it's safe with me." He turns and strides back to the front, leaving her stranded. The teenager next to her snorts awake, eyeing her with bleary suspicion, while the baby's wails pierce the air. Lena sits, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap, the seat digging into her hips. She can still hear Travis's voice over the intercom, crackling through the cabin like a victory lap. "Ladies and gentlemen, order's been restored," he says, his tone smug. "Enjoy your flight." The passengers in economy shift, some glancing at her with curiosity, others with disdain. A woman across the aisle leans over, her voice a harsh whisper. "You should have known better than to try that up there." Lena doesn't respond, her mind racing. She knows Travis thinks he's won, that he's put her in her place. But he doesn't know who she is. Not yet. She closes her eyes. The baby's cries fading into the background and starts plotting. This isn't over, not by a long shot. She's faced bigger bullies than Travis Monroe, and she's never lost a fight she didn't choose to walk away from. Her fingers tap rhythmically on her knee, a silent countdown. He's got her briefcase, her dignity's bruised, and the whole plane's against her. But Lena Carter didn't build Horizon Skies by folding at the first punch. She's got moves he can't even dream of. And when she hits back, he'll wish he'd never opened his mouth. The plane drones on, cutting through the night, and Lena waits, her resolve hardening with every mile. Travis might think he's king of this tin can, but she's the one who owns the sky, and she's about to remind him of that, one brutal step at a time. Lena Carter sits ramrod straight in the cramped economy seat, the torn fabric scratching her thighs through her tailored pants, the baby's wails drilling into her skull like a jackhammer. The plane hums steadily at 35,000 feet, slicing through the black night somewhere over Nevada, but the air in row 27 feels thick, suffocating, laced with the sour tang of sweat and cheap perfume. Her briefcase is gone, snatched by Travis Monroe, and her pride's taken a hit. But Lena's mind is a steel trap, snapping shut on every detail. She adjusts her blazer, smoothing a wrinkle, and lets her eyes drift shut, not to sleep, but to listen. The passengers around her, emboldened by Travis's stunt, don't bother lowering their voices anymore. A guy in a faded Dodgers cap 2 rows up twists around, his sunburned neck creasing as he mutters to his buddy. "She probably stole that ticket. You know how they are." His friend, chugging a warm beer, grunts in agreement. Yeah, no way she paid for first class. Across the aisle, a woman in a floral dress clutches her purse tighter, whispering to her teenage daughter, "I bet she's one of those scammers, sneaking into places she doesn't belong." The daughter nods, popping her gum, her eyes flicking, to Lena with a mix of curiosity and scorn. Lena keeps her face still, her breathing even, but inside, her blood simmers, a slow boil stoked by every word. She's heard this garbage before in boardrooms, on streets, in her own damn airline, but it never gets easier to swallow. She slips a hand into her pocket, pulling out her phone, a sleek black slab that Travis somehow missed. Her thumb hovers over the screen, then taps out a quick message to Marcus, her COO. A man who's been her right hand since Horizon Skies was just a dream scribbled on a napkin. "Dig into Travis Monroe," she types, her fingers steady despite the jostling of the snoring kid next to her. "I want everything." She hits send, the signal bouncing off some satellite miles above, and tucks the phone back into her pocket. The baby's cries spike, a shrill note that makes the woman beside her hiss, "Can't you shut that thing up?" Lena ignores her, her mind already spinning ahead. Minutes tick by, the plane's engines a dull roar, and then her phone buzzes, a soft vibration against her leg. She pulls it out, shielding the screen with her hand. Marcus's reply glows in the dim light. Travis has a file. Multiple complaints, all black passengers, all buried by a supervisor clique. Smells like a cover-up. Lena's lips press into a thin line, her pulse quickening. She knew Travis was a bully, but this is a pattern, a system, a festering, rot in her own company. She starts typing a response, her mind racing with possibilities when a shadow falls over her. Travis looms in the aisle, his uniform crisp, his eyes glinting with malice. "What's that?" he snaps, lunging for the phone before she can react. His fingers close around it, yanking it from her grasp, and he holds it up, inspecting it, like a cop with a suspect's wallet. "No electronics allowed," he declares, his voice loud, performative, drawing every eye in the cabin. Lena leans forward, her voice low and sharp. "That's not a rule, and you know it." Travis doesn't blink. He smirks, turns, and slams the phone against the galley wall, the crack of shattering glass echoing over the baby's wails. Shards scatter across the floor, glinting under the fluorescent lights, and he tosses the broken husk into a trash bin with a flourish. "Oops," he says, shrugging. "Guess it's trash now." The cabin erupts, not in outrage, but in approval. The Dodgers cap guy claps, slow and deliberate. "Nice one, man." The beer chugger hoots, "That'll teach her." Even the floral dress woman nods, muttering, "Good riddance." Lena stares at the spot where her phone died, her lifeline, to Marcus severed, her hands curling into fists on her lap. Travis saunters back toward first class, his laughter trailing behind him like exhaust fumes, while the passengers settle back into their seats, smug and satisfied. The kid next to her snorts, waking up long enough to mumble, "Should have stayed quiet," before dozing off again. Lena's chest tightens, her fury a coiled spring, but she forces it down, her mind shifting gears. She's got no phone, no proof, no way to call for backup. But she's not helpless. She's Lena Carter, the woman who turned a failing charter service into Horizon Skies, the one who outsmarted every shark in the industry. Travis thinks he's stripped her bare, left her defenseless, but he's wrong. She's got her brain, her will, and a memory that doesn't miss a beat. She leans back, the seat creaking under her, and closes her eyes again, not to rest, but to plan. What's Travis hiding? Who's protecting him? She replays Marcus's message in her head, every word searing into her memory. Complaints, black passengers, a clique. It's bigger than one flight attendant with a chip on his shoulder. It's a network, a cancer eating at her airline, and Travis is just the tip of the spear. She can feel the eyes still on her, the whispers still buzzing, but they don't matter. They think she's beaten, a nobody stuck in a middle seat with a broken phone and a bruised ego. They're wrong. She's a queen playing pawn, and this game's just getting started. The plane drones on, the night stretching endless outside the windows, and Lena waits, her resolve a quiet fire. Travis might have won this round, but he's lit a match he can't put out. She'll find a way to hit back, to expose him, to tear down whatever shield he's hiding behind. The question is how, and she's got hours left in this metal tube to figure it out. Her fingers tap her knee again, a steady rhythm, counting down to the moment she turns this whole damn flight upside down. Hey folks, what do you think? Comment. Number 1 if you're raging at Travis's power trip, or number 2 if you think Lena's already got him beat in her head. Ever faced a bully who thought they owned the world? Drop your story below, hit that like button if you're rooting for justice, and subscribe to see Lena flip this script. How's she going to strike back with no phone, no proof, and a cabin full of haters? Stick around to find out. Lena Carter sits in the economy middle seat, the jagged edge of the armrest jabbing her hip, the air thick with the stench of spilled beer and baby formula. The plane cruises steady at 35,000 feet, the desert below swallowed by night, but her mind churns, replaying Marcus's text about Travis Monroe's buried complaints. Her phone's gone, smashed to bits by that smug flight attendant, but she's not out of moves. She's Lena Carter, the woman who built Horizon Skies from a rusted hangar into a coast-to-coast giant. And she's not about to let some racist punk in a vest dictate her fate. The whispers around her have dulled to a low hum. The passengers, settling into their own worlds, but she can still feel their stares, their judgment prickling her skin like static. She shifts, her blazer catching on the seat's frayed stitching, and decides it's time to act. She raises a hand, slow and deliberate, catching the eye of Jamal, the timid attendant who'd hovered near the galley earlier. He's young, maybe 25, his uniform slightly wrinkled, his brown eyes darting nervously as he shuffles over. "Ma'am," he says, his voice soft, almost swallowed by the engine's drone. Lena keeps her tone firm, measured, like she's addressing a boardroom. "I need to speak to the captain now." Jamal blinks, his fingers tightening around the water pitcher he's holding. I don't know if that's allowed," he stammers, glancing toward the front where Travis disappeared. Lena leans forward, her gaze locking onto his. "Airline. Policy says any passenger can request the captain if there's a safety concern. Travis violated protocol. I'm not asking, I'm telling." Her words hit like a gavel, and Jamal nods, swallowing hard. "Okay, follow me," he mutters, turning toward the cockpit. Lena stands, smoothing her pants, and follows him through the narrow aisle, the passengers' eyes trailing her like spotlights. The floral dress woman hisses, "What's she up to now?" But Lena keeps moving, her heels clicking against the floor. Jamal knocks on the cockpit door, a sharp rap that echoes in the tight space. It swings open, revealing Captain Hayes, a grizzled man with a buzz cut and a face carved from years in the sky. His gray eyes flick from Jamal to Lena, narrowing slightly. "What's this?" he gruffs, his voice rough as gravel. Jamal steps aside, gesturing to Lena. "She wants to talk to you, sir." Hayes crosses his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Make it quick." Lena steps forward, her posture unshakable, and launches into it. "Your flight attendant, Travis Monroe, forced me out of my confirmed first-class seat without cause. He smashed my phone, stole my briefcase, and humiliated me in front of the cabin. That's a breach of Horizon Skies policy, Section 12, Paragraph 4. I'm demanding resolution." Her voice is steady, each word a brick in a wall she's building. Hayes rubs his jaw, his calloused fingers rasping against stubble, and glances at Jamal. "That true?" Jamal nods, hesitant. "I saw some of it, sir. He moved her, took her stuff." Hayes sighs, a heavy gust that smells faintly of tobacco, and straightens up. "All right, lady, you're going back to first class. Monroe's out. Of line." Lena feels a spark of triumph, a flicker of heat in her chest. She nods, crisp and professional. "Thank you, Captain." Hayes grabs his radio, barking into it. "Monroe, get up here." Moments later, Travis strides in, his smirk faltering when he sees Lena standing there uncowed. "What's this about?" he snaps, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Hayes jabs a finger at him. "You don't move passengers without my say-so. She's back in 3A. Now." Travis's face twists, his eyes darting to Lena with pure venom. But he mutters, "Yes, sir," through gritted teeth. Lena turns, head high, and walks back to first class, the captain's order ringing in her ears. The passengers watch, some gaping, others scowling as she reclaims her seat. The leather cushions sigh under her weight, a small victory wrapping around her like a blanket. She crosses her legs, her hands resting on her knees, and lets herself breathe. Travis slinks past, his glare burning holes in the air, but he's silent, his tail between his legs. For a moment she thinks she's turned the tide, shown them she's not some pushover they can kick around. The gin and tonic's gone, replaced by a water glass from Jamal, but she sips it anyway, the coolness steadying her nerves. She's back where she belongs, and Travis is on notice. Maybe this flight won't be a total war zone after all. But then the cockpit door bangs open again, and Hayes storms out, his face redder than a sunset over the Pacific. The cabin falls silent, the hum of the engine's the only sound as he marches straight to her row. "Carter, right?" he says, his voice low, clipped. Lena nods, her stomach tightening. "What's wrong?" Hayes leans in, his breath hot on her face. "Just got a call from base. Supervisor says you're flagged as a security risk. Some report about disruptive behavior filed 10 minutes ago. I've reconsidered. You're out of here." Lena's jaw drops, her calm shattering like glass. "That's a lie," she says, her voice rising. "You saw what happened. Travis is behind this." Hayes shakes his head, his eyes hard. "Doesn't matter. Orders are orders. Back to economy now." Before she can argue, Travis appears, a pair of zip ties dangling from his hand, his smirk back in full force. "Let's go, princess," he sneers, grabbing her arm. Lena pulls back, but Hayes nods to Jamal, who hesitates before stepping in to help. Together, they drag her down the aisle, her heels scraping the carpet, her blazer sleeve tearing at the seam. The first-class passengers cheer, a man in a fedora shouting, "Finally!" as she's hauled past the curtain. In economy, Travis shoves her into the same middle seat, the snoring kid jolting awake, the baby's cries spiking. He yanks her wrists together, looping the zip ties around them and pulling tight, the plastic biting into her skin. "No more tricks," he hisses, close enough for her to smell his cologne, sharp and cheap. Jamal stands by, his eyes on the floor, muttering, "Sorry, ma'am," before scurrying off. Lena sits, her hands bound, her heart pounding against her ribs. The zip ties cut deeper with every move, a thin trickle of blood staining her cuff. Travis steps back, dusting his hands like he's finished a chore, and saunters off, his laughter echoing. The passengers around her settle in, some smirking, others pretending she's invisible. She stares at her bound wrists, the red welt rising, and feels the weight of it all crashing down. She'd won, for a fleeting second, had the captain on her side, her seat reclaimed. Now she's cuffed, humiliated, and back where Travis wants her, his fabricated report turning her victory to ash. Her mind races, piecing it together. Travis didn't just act on impulse. He's got someone higher up, someone with enough pull to twist the truth in midair. She flexes her fingers, the pain grounding her, and vows to find out who. This isn't over. She's down, bloodied, but not broken. Travis thinks he's caged her, but he's only stoked the fire. She'll get free, get even, and burn his whole game to the ground. The plane flies on, oblivious, and Lena waits, her resolve a blade, sharpening with every passing mile. Lena Carter sits pinned in the economy middle seat, her wrists throbbing under the tight zip ties, the plastic edges slicing into her skin with every slight twist. The plane hums along at 35,000 feet, cutting through the night sky, somewhere over Utah, but the cabin feels like a pressure cooker, the air heavy with hostility. Blood seeps from her cuffs, staining the sleeve of her navy blazer, a slow drip she can't wipe away. The snoring teenager beside her shifts, his elbow jabbing her ribs, while the baby on her other side screeches, its mother rocking it with a scowl aimed at Lena, as if she's the cause. Her hands are bound, her dignity shredded, but her mind stays sharp, replaying the captain's betrayal, Travis Monroe's smirk, and that fabricated security risk report. She knows it's a setup, a knife twisted by someone with more pull than a flight attendant should have. The intercom crackles, snapping her back to the moment, and Travis's voice booms through the cabin. smooth and smug as a game show host. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've detained a disruptive passenger for your safety," he announces, pausing for effect. "Rest easy, folks, we've got it under control." The words ignite the cabin like a match on dry grass. Passengers twist in their seats, craning to gawk at her, their faces a mix of fear and glee. A woman in a red sweater 3 rows up gasps, clutching her necklace. "Thank God!" A guy in a trucker hat near the window pumps his fist. "About time they locked her up." Lena keeps her head still, her eyes fixed on the seat back in front of her, but she feels every stare, every whisper clawing at her skin. The murmurs grow louder, bolder, a chorus of venom spilling out unchecked. "She's probably high," a college kid in a hoodie mutters, loud enough for his row to hear. "Looks like a troublemaker," an older man with a comb-over grunts, nodding sagely. Lena's jaw clenches, her teeth grinding, but she doesn't flinch. She's faced boardrooms full of skeptics who sneered at her color, her gender, her nerve. But this is a new low, a public flogging at 35,000 feet. The first-class curtain parts, and a man steps into view, his pinstripe suit pristine, his salt-and-pepper hair slicked back. He's Greg, the businessman who'd muttered approval when she was dragged out earlier. And now he's strutting down the aisle, his wife trailing behind in a beige coat, her eyes wide with performative terror. He stops near Lena's row, planting, his feet wide, and points at her, his voice booming. "This woman's a menace," he declares, turning to the cabin like he's rallying a jury. "She scared my wife half to death up there, acting like she owned the place." His wife nods, clutching his arm, her voice trembling. "I couldn't even breathe with her glaring at me." Lena meets Greg's gaze, her eyes steady, unyielding, a silent dare that makes his face flush redder. She doesn't speak, doesn't need to. Her silence cuts deeper than any retort. The cabin buzzes, passengers nodding, some pulling out phones to film her, the zip ties glinting under the harsh lights. "Get her off this plane," a woman in a tracksuit shouts, her voice shrill. "She's ruining our trip." The teenager next to Lena snickers, elbowing her again. "Told you to stay quiet." Her composure frays, a thread pulling loose, but she holds it together, her breathing slow, deliberate. Travis reappears, sauntering down the aisle, his grin wide enough to split his skull. He stops beside her, leaning in close, his cologne stinging her nose. "See? Everyone knows you don't belong," he whispers, his breath hot on her ear. Then he straightens, clapping his hands like a ringmaster. "All right, folks, let's do a quick check," he says, loud and theatrical. He bends down, rummaging through the bag at her feet, the one Jamal had returned after her brief stint back in first class. Lena's stomach twists. She knows what's coming. Travis pauses, his hand frozen in the bag, then pulls it out slowly, holding up a small kitchen knife, its blade catching the light. "Well, well," he says, turning it for the cabin to see. "What do we have here?" The plane erupts, a tidal wave of gasps and screams crashing over her. "She's got a weapon!" the red sweater woman shrieks, clutching her seat. "She's a terrorist!" the trucker hat guy bellows, slamming his tray table up. Greg staggers, back, his voice rising. "I knew it, she's dangerous!" Lena's heart slams against her ribs, her bound hands trembling as she stares at the knife. It's not hers. She's never seen it before. "That's planted," she says, her voice cutting through the chaos, firm but strained. "You put it there." Travis laughs, a harsh bark, and holds the knife higher. "Oh, sure, blame me." "Nice. Try, sweetheart." He turns to the cabin, shaking his head. "This is why we took action, folks. You're all safe now." The passengers roar, a mob unleashed, some standing to yell, others filming with shaky hands. "Throw her out!" The tracksuit woman screeches. "Land this thing!" the comb-over man demands. Lena's head spins, the noise a hammer pounding her skull, but she locks eyes with Travis, her glare a blade of its own. He's framed her, turned a seating dispute into a death sentence, and the cabin's eating it up. Her fingers flex against the zip ties, the pain sharpening her focus. She's Lena Carter, the woman who owns this airline, but right now, she's a scapegoat, a villain in a story she didn't write. Travis pockets the knife, his smirk unwavering, and radios the cockpit. "Captain, we've got a situation. Passengers armed, requesting emergency action." Hayes's voice crackles back, gruff and clipped. "Understood. We're diverting." The plane tilts slightly, the engine's shifting pitch, and the seatbelt sign pings on, a shrill chime that sends the cabin into a frenzy. Passengers scream, clutching armrests while Greg shouts, "Get her off before she kills us all." Lena's composure cracks, a fissure running through her steel wall. She's trapped, cuffed, accused, and now the plane's turning back, her fate spiraling out of her hands. The zip ties bite deeper, blood pooling on her lap, a stark red against her dark pants. She knows Travis didn't act alone. That report, this knife, it's too coordinated, too vicious. Someone's pulling strings, someone high enough to twist, an entire flight into a lynch mob. Her chest heaves, her breath shallow, but she forces her mind to steady. She's been cornered before, written off, underestimated, and she's always clawed her way out. This is worse, uglier, a public execution in the sky, but she's not done. Travis thinks he's won. The passengers think she's finished, but they don't know her. They don't know the fire she's got, the moves she's still holding back. The plane banks descending toward an unknown airport, and Lena sits, her bound hands a silent vow. She'll survive this. She'll expose him. She'll make them all pay. The engines growl, the cabin shakes, and she waits, her resolve hardening into something unbreakable, a storm brewing behind her calm facade. Lena Carter sits rigid in the economy middle seat, her wrists screaming under the zip ties, blood soaking her cuffs in dark, sticky patches. The plane lurches, its nose dipping as it begins a sharp descent, the engines growling like a beast roused from sleep. The cabin lights flicker, casting jagged shadows across the passengers' panicked faces, their screams piercing the air like shards of glass. The seatbelt sign glows red, its chime swallowed by the chaos, while the teenager beside her clutches his armrest wide-eyed, and the baby's wails hit a fever pitch, its mother rocking it frantically. Lena's heart slams against her ribs, her bound hands useless as the plane tilts toward Denver, the nearest airport, according to Travis Monroe's smug radio call. Outside, the night sky blurs into streaks of black and gray, the altitude dropping, fast, 30,000 feet, then 25, then 20. The intercom stays silent, but Travis struts through the aisle, his grin a twisted mask of triumph, the planted knife still bulging in his pocket. "Stay calm, folks," he shouts over the din, his voice dripping with fake reassurance. "We're handling it." Passengers nod, clinging to his words like a lifeline, their fear morphing into rage aimed at Lena. "She did this!" The woman in the red sweater yells, pointing a trembling finger. "She's gonna crash us," the trucker hat guy roars, slamming his fist into the seat back. Lena's jaw tightens, her teeth grinding as the accusations pile up, each one a brick in the wall closing her in. She knows the knife was a setup, knows Travis turned this flight into a witch hunt, but proving it with her hands tied and her phone smashed is a pipe dream. The plane shudders, a violent jolt that sends trays clattering, and then the wheels screech against the tarmac, a bone-rattling thud that silences the cabin for a split second. Sirens wail outside, red and blue lights flashing through the windows, and the passengers erupt again, a tidal wave of relief and fury. "Get her out!" Greg, the pinstripe suit guy, bellows from first class, his wife sobbing into his shoulder. The door bangs open, cold air rushing in, and 3 air marshals storm aboard, their boots pounding the floor, guns drawn, vests emblazoned with bold white letters. The lead marshal, a hulking man with a buzz cut and a scar slicing his eyebrow, locks eyes on Lena. "You!" he barks, his voice a gunshot. "Up!" Travis steps forward, holding out the knife like a trophy, his smirk wide. "Found this in her bag, sir. She's armed." The marshal, Vickers, snatches it, turning it over in his gloved hand, then nods to his team. "Take her." Lena's yanked from her seat, the zip ties tearing deeper into her flesh as the marshals grab her arms, hauling her down the aisle. Passengers cheer, a sickening roar, the red sweater woman clapping, "Good riddance." Lena stumbles, her heels catching on the carpet, but she keeps her head up, her eyes burning into Travis as she passes. He winks, a flicker of glee, and she vows silently to bury him. The marshals drag her off the plane, the Denver tarmac slick with frost, the night air biting her face. Sirens scream louder, a swarm of police cars and flashing lights surrounding the jet. The passengers' faces pressed to the windows, filming her like she's a circus freak. Vickers shoves her into a gray holding room inside the terminal, a concrete box with a single metal chair and a flickering bulb. He slams the door, the clang echoing, and looms over her, his scar twitching as he sneers. "You people always pull stunts like this," he growls, tossing the knife onto a table with a clatter. "Thought you'd take down a whole plane, huh?" Lena's chest heaves, her wrists throbbing, but she straightens, her voice steady despite the pain. "That's not mine. It was planted. I'm a victim here, not a criminal." Vickers laughs, a harsh, guttural sound, and leans in, his breath sour with tobacco. "Victim? Tell that to the 100 folks who think you're a terrorist." He pulls her ID from her pocket, a sleek card she'd kept in her blazer, and squints at it. "Lena Carter," he reads, then snorts, ripping it in half with a flick of his wrist. "Fake. Nice try." The pieces flutter to the floor, and Lena's stomach drops, her last shred of proof trashed. "That's illegal," she says, her tone sharp. "And I know my rights. I want a lawyer." Vickers smirks, kicking the chair toward her. "Sit. You're not calling anyone." He paces, his boots scuffing the concrete, and starts grilling her, his questions a barrage. "Where'd you get the knife? Who's your target? Why'd you board?" Lena answers each one, calm and clear. "It's not mine. No one. To get to New York." But he doesn't listen. Just scribbles nonsense on a clipboard, twisting her, words into a confession she never made. Her mind races, searching for a way out, when a faint buzz hums against her foot. Her backup phone, a slim burner Marcus insisted she carry, tucked inside her shoe since takeoff. Vickers doesn't notice, too busy snarling about threats like her, and she shifts, pressing her heel to feel it vibrate again. Hope flickers, a tiny ember in the dark. She's cuffed, bleeding, locked in a cell with a racist marshal who's already convicted her. But she's not dead yet. The interrogation drags on, Vickers slamming his fist on the table, demanding she confess. But she stays silent now, her eyes locked on the floor, her thoughts on that phone. He finally storms out, muttering about paperwork, leaving her alone with the flickering light and the cold chair. She wiggles her foot, the phone still there, and calculates. She's got one shot to reach Marcus, to turn this nightmare around. Travis thinks he's won. Vickers thinks she's broken. But they don't know her. They don't know the empire she built, the battles she's fought, the steel in her spine. The room's silent, the sirens fading outside, and Lena waits. Resolve a quiet storm. She'll get that phone, make that call, and blow this whole thing wide open. The plane's grounded, her name's Mud, and the marshals are circling. But she's still Lena Carter, the woman who owns Horizon Skies. And she's about to remind them all. Hey folks, what's your take? Comment number 1 if you're furious at Travis's frame job, or number 2 if you think Lena's tougher than steel. Ever been accused of something you didn't do? Drop it below, smash that like button if you're cheering her on, and subscribe to see her fight back. Can she turn the tables with a secret phone and a racist marshal breathing down her neck? Stay tuned to find out. Lena Carter sits in the stark Denver holding room, her wrists raw and bloody under the zip ties, the cold metal chair biting into her thighs. The flickering bulb overhead buzzes like a trapped fly, casting a sickly yellow glow across the concrete walls. Her blazer hangs torn at the sleeve, her pants stained with dried blood, but her mind is a razor cutting through the chaos. Vickers, the scar-faced marshal, left minutes ago, his boots echoing down the hall, his racist rant still ringing in her ears. The shredded pieces of her ID lie scattered on the floor, a taunt she can't answer, but her secret weapon hums against. Her foot, the backup phone tucked in her shoe, a lifeline Marcus insisted she carry. The room's silent, save for the distant hum of airport chaos outside, and Lena shifts, her heel pressing the device to confirm it's still there. Her hands are bound, her body aches, but she's not beaten. She's Lena Carter, the woman who turned Horizon Skies into a powerhouse, and she's about to flip this game on its head. She wiggles her foot, inching the phone free, her movement slow, deliberate, every creak of the chair a risk. It slides out, a slim black rectangle, and drops to the floor with a soft thud. She freezes, ears straining for footsteps, but the hall stays quiet. Using her toe, she nudges it closer, then kicks off her other shoe, gripping the phone between her bare feet. Her wrists scream as she bends, the zip ties gouging deeper, but she grits her teeth, lifting it to her lap. Blood smears the screen, but it lights up, and she dials Marcus with her nose, her breath hitching as it rings. He picks up on the second buzz, his voice tight with worry. "Lena, where are you?" She keeps it low, urgent. "Denver. They've got me in a cell, framed me with a knife. Travis did it. What did you find?" Marcus exhales, a sharp gust. "It's bad. Travis is tied to a white supremacist group. Inside Horizon. They've been targeting black passengers for years, burying complaints. Supervisors cover it up, probably higher-ups too." Lena's pulse spikes, her suspicions confirmed. "Leak it," she says, her voice steel. "Every news outlet, every social platform, now." Marcus hesitates. "You sure? This could tank the stock." She nods, though he can't see. "Do it. I'm not letting them win." He mutters agreement, and the line cuts. Lena slips the phone back into her shoe, her heart pounding, her plan in motion. Hours crawl by, the bulb flickering faster, her wrists swelling under the ties. She's alone, trapped, but she knows Marcus is out there, lighting the fuse. Then, the chaos breaks. The door bangs open, Vickers storming in, his face a thundercloud, a radio crackling at his hip. "You're out," he snaps, yanking a knife from his belt and slicing the zip ties with a rough jerk. Blood rushes back to her hands, a searing pain, and he shoves her toward the door, muttering, "Sorry, ma'am," under his breath, his eyes avoiding hers. Lena stumbles into the terminal, rubbing her wrists, the air buzzing with commotion. Reporters swarm the gates, cameras flashing, their voices a frantic hum. "Horizon Skies scandal," one shouts. "Racist flight crew exposed," another yells. Passengers from her flight mill around, some clutching phones, their faces pale, as they scroll expos screaming about Travis's history. A woman in a green coat locks eyes with her, whispering, "Is that her?" Lena straightens, her blazer torn but her spine unbowed, and heads for the boarding desk. The stories hit like a bomb, headlines blazing. Airline covers up hate. Group. She's done it, turned the tables, put Travis and his clique on blast. The desk clerk, a nervous girl with braids, hands her a new ticket. "Next flight to New York, ma'am. Boarding now." Lena nods, her lips twitching with a grim satisfaction, and walks to the gate, the crowd parting like she's royalty. She boards the new plane, a gleaming Boeing, and sinks into a first-class seat, the leather cool against her bruised skin. The engines hum, the cabin quiet, and she lets herself breathe, thinking she's won. The news is out, the public's raging, Travis is toast. She sips a water handed by a shaky attendant, her hands trembling from pain but steady in spirit. The plane taxis, lifting off into the night, and she closes her eyes, the weight lifting off her chest. She's Lena Carter, the queen of Horizon Skies, and she's taken back her throne. But then the galley curtain rustles, a shadow moving too fast, and her eyes snap open. Travis Monroe steps out, his uniform swapped for a stolen one. His blonde, hair mussed, his eyes wild with hate. He's not in cuffs, not in jail. He's here, on her plane, his lips curling into a snarl. "You think you're clever?" he hisses, his voice low, venomous. "You've got no idea what's coming." Lena's heart stops, her victory shattering like glass. He shouldn't be here. The leak was supposed to end him, but he slipped the net, his presence a dagger in her gut. The plane climbs, the cabin lights dimming, and Travis vanishes back, into the galley, his threat hanging in the air. Passengers sleep, oblivious, but Lena's wide awake, her mind racing. How'd he get on? Who let him go? She scans the cabin, every shadow a threat, her bruised hands clenching the armrests. The news hit hard, rock the airline, but Travis isn't done. He's got allies, a network deeper than she thought, and they're not backing down. Her counterstrike landed, shook the earth, but it sparked a war she didn't see coming. She's free, unbound, back in first class. But she's not safe. The plane soars, cutting through the night, and Lena braces herself, her resolve a fortress. Travis is here, hunting her, and she's got no phone, no backup, just her wits. He thinks he's got the upper hand, but she's faced worse odds, and she'll fight, expose them all, burn their empire to ash. The engines hum, the altitude steadies, and she waits, her eyes locked on the galley, ready for the next blow. Lena Carter sits in her first-class seat, the fresh Boeing's leather cool against her bruised skin. The hum of the engines a steady pulse as the plane climbs out of Denver, bound for New York. The cabin lights dim, casting a soft glow over the dozen passengers scattered across the plush rows, most dozing under blankets, their faces slack with exhaustion. Her wrists ache, the raw welts from the zip ties throbbing under her torn blazer sleeves. But she sips her coffee, the bitter heat grounding her. The media leak worked. Travis Monroe's racist clique is exposed, and she's back where she belongs, thinking she's clawed her way out of the pit. Her victory feels fragile, a thin thread stretched tight, but she lets herself relax, her shoulders easing for the first time in hours. The galley curtain ahead rustles, a faint swish she barely notices, until a figure steps out, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. Travis Monroe stands there, his stolen uniform wrinkled, his blonde hair wild, his eyes glinting with a feral rage that stops her heart cold. He shouldn't be here, not after the leak, not after the marshals. But he is, alive and venomous, his lips twisting into a snarl. "You'll pay for this," he hisses, his voice a low growl that cuts through. The cabin's quiet. Lena's coffee cup trembles in her hand, the liquid sloshing, and she sets it down, her mind racing. How'd he escape? Who's covering for him? Before she can speak, he lunges, a real knife flashing in his grip, its blade longer, sharper than the planted one, a butcher's tool meant to kill. The cabin explodes, passengers jolting awake, their screams ripping through the air as Travis swings at her. Lena dives, her reflexes kicking in, and the blade slices the headrest, foam spilling like snow. She grabs her tray table, yanking it free, and swings it up, the metal edge slamming into his wrist with a sickening crack. He staggers back, cursing, the knife clattering to the floor, and she kicks it under the seat, her heel grinding into the carpet. "Help!" A woman in a silk scarf shrieks, clutching her husband, while a man in a hoodie scrambles over his row, yelling, "Stop him!" Travis recovers, his face a mask of fury, and charges again, his fists flying. Lena ducks, her bruised hands blocking. A blow, pain searing up her arms, but she holds her ground, shoving him into the bulkhead with a thud that rattles the overhead bins. The captain's voice crackles over the intercom, calm but strained. "Folks, we're descending. Stay seated." The plane tilts, a sharp drop that sends trays sliding, passengers gripping armrests, their cries spiking. Lena's stomach lurches, her eyes darting to Travis, who's back on his feet, his grin wilder now, unhinged. He doesn't care about the descent, doesn't care about the chaos. He's here to end her. She glances at the galley, spotting a coffee pot on the counter, and lunges for it, her fingers closing around the handle. Travis grabs her arm, twisting hard, but she swings the pot, scalding liquid splashing his face. He howls, clawing at his eyes, and stumbles back, giving her a breath to think. The plane shudders, the engines roaring louder, and she realizes this isn't just a fight. Something's wrong. She bolts for the cockpit, her heels pounding the aisle, passengers screaming around her. The doors ajar, and she bursts in, freezing, at the sight. The captain, a wiry man with graying temples, wrestles the controls, his face slick with sweat, while the co-pilot, Brent, a stocky guy with a buzz cut, holds a gun to his head, his finger twitching on the trigger. "Keep it down!" Brent snaps, his voice a snarl, his eyes flicking to Lena. She stops, her breath catching, the pieces snapping into place. Brent's with Travis, part of the clique, and he's sabotaging the plane. The altimeter spins 15,000 feet and dropping fast, the ground rushing up to meet them. "You," Brent growls, swinging the gun toward her. "Sit down or you're dead." Lena's hands clench, her mind racing. Travis staggers in behind her, his face red and blistered, his rage a living thing. "Finish her!" he yells, shoving. Past her toward Brent. The captain twists, elbowing Brent's arm, and the gun wavers, giving Lena a split-second chance. She grabs her briefcase from the floor, a heavy slab she'd reclaimed in Denver, and swings it hard, smashing Brent's hand against the console. The gun fires, a deafening bang, the bullet punching a hole in the wall, wind whistling through the breach. Brent drops the weapon, cursing, and Lena kicks it away, her heel sending it skittering under the seat. The captain grabs the yoke, pulling, hard, but the plane's in a nosedive, the horizon tilting crazily outside the windshield. Travis lunges at her again, his burned hands clawing her throat, but she drives her knee into his gut, doubling him over. "Help me!" the captain shouts, his voice hoarse, and Lena stumbles to his side, her hands shaking as she grips the co-yoke. She's no pilot, but she's flown simulators, learned the basics when she bought Horizon, and she pulls with him, muscles screaming. The plane groans, metal straining, and the altimeter slows. 10,000 feet, 8,000, leveling out, at 6. The captain slams switches, his hands a blur, and the descent steadies. The ground no longer a death sentence. "Chicago," he gasps, nodding to the radio. "We're landing there." Lena nods, her chest heaving, and turns to see Travis and Brent slumped against the wall, dazed but alive. She grabs a headset cord, wrapping it around Travis's wrists, then Brent's, tying them tight, her bloodied hands leaving smears on their uniforms. The captain radios ahead, his voice steady now. "Emergency landing O'Hare, 2 hostiles subdued." The plane banks, the city lights glinting below, and touches down, a rough jolt that rattles her bones. Police swarm aboard, cuffing Travis and Brent, dragging them off as passengers cheer, their relief a stark contrast to the hate they'd spewed before. Lena sinks into a seat, her body trembling, thinking it's over. She saved the plane, stopped the killers, reclaimed her life. But as she steps onto the tarmac, a roar rises from the terminal, a mob of airport workers, dozens strong, charging toward her. Their faces twist with fury, fists raised, voices chanting slurs that hit like bullets. "Get out, you don't belong!" Lena freezes, her victory souring, the police hesitating beside her. Travis's clique isn't done. It's bigger, angrier, and now it's a horde coming for her head. She's out of the frying pan, into a fire she didn't see coming, her hands clenching at her sides. The plane's safe, the killers are caught, but she's not. The night air bites, the mob closes in, and Lena braces, her resolve a wall against the storm. Lena Carter staggers onto the Chicago O'Hare tarmac, her bruised hands trembling, the cold night air stinging her torn blazer and blood-streaked wrists. The plane looms behind her, its engines still ticking from the emergency landing. Passengers, spilling out with dazed relief after her desperate cockpit fight. She'd wrestled the controls with the captain, subdued Travis Monroe and his gun-wielding co-pilot Brent, and brought the jet down safely, her body screaming with every move. Sweat beads on her forehead, her breath shallow, but she'd done it, saved them all, thinking the nightmare was over. The police haul Travis and Brent away, their wrists cuffed, their faces bruised from her counterattack, and she allows herself a flicker of triumph. She's Lena Carter, the woman who owns Horizon Skies, and she's beaten the odds again. But the air shifts, a roar swelling from the terminal, and her head snaps up. A mob of airport workers, 50 strong, storms toward her, their orange vests glowing under the floodlights, their fists raised, their voices a guttural chant of slurs. "You don't belong here! Get her out!" Lena freezes, her victory curdling in her gut, the police beside her exchanging uneasy glances. The mob closes in, a wall of rage, their boots pounding the asphalt, bottles and tools clutched like weapons. A burly man with a shaved head hurls a wrench, the metal clanging inches from her feet, and she stumbles back, her heels slipping on the frost-slick ground. "She's a liar," a woman in a hairnet screams, her voice shrill. "She crashed the plane." Another yells, waving a flashlight like a club. Lena's chest tightens, her mind racing. This isn't random. It's Travis's clique, the supremacist network Marcus exposed, striking back with a vengeance. She spins, searching for an escape, and bolts toward the terminal lounge, her lungs burning as she ducks a flying bottle, glass shattering behind her. The police shout, "Stand down!" But their voices drown in the mob's fury, their hesitation a betrayal she feels in her bones. She bursts through the lounge doors, slamming them shut, and barricades them with a table, its legs scraping the tile. The mob pounds outside, fists and tools battering the glass, cracks spiderwebbing across the panes. "You can't hide," a voice bellows, thick with hate. Lena backs away, her eyes darting for a weapon, settling on a fire extinguisher bolted to the wall. She yanks it free, her bruised hands shaking, and grips it tight, ready to swing. Windows shatter, glass raining down, and the mob surges in, their faces twisted with loathing. She swings the extinguisher, foam blasting into the shaved-head guy's eyes, sending him reeling, but another grabs her arm, wrenching it back. She kicks, her heel cracking his shin, and breaks free, sprinting for the back exit. The lounge is a war zone, chairs toppling, screams echoing, and she dives through the door, slamming it behind her. She's in a service hall now, the fluorescent lights buzzing, her breaths ragged as she runs, the mob's shouts fading but not gone. She finds a break room, a cramped space with a sink and a table, and barricades the door with a vending machine, its weight screeching across the floor. Her hands fumble for a borrowed phone from a trembling janitor she'd passed, his eyes wide with fear, and she dials her lawyer, Elise, her voice low, urgent. "Chicago, O'Hare. Mob's after me. Travis's crew." Elise's voice crackles, through, sharp and steady. "I'm on it. Stay put." Minutes tick by, the vending machine rattling as the mob finds her, their fists hammering the door. Then sirens wail, louder, closer, and the pounding stops, replaced by shouts of, "Cops!" Lena slumps against the wall, her body shaking, thinking she's safe. The door bursts open, not with the mob, but with police, their guns drawn. Faces. Hard. "Lena Carter?" a grizzled officer snaps, his badge glinting. She nods, relief flooding her, but he grabs her arm, yanking her up. "You're under arrest, inciting a riot." Her stomach drops, her voice rising. "What? I saved the plane." He cuffs her, the metal cold against her raw wrists, and drags her out, the mob jeering from a distance, held back by a thin police line. She's shoved into a squad car, the door slamming, the terminal a blur of lights and hate. At the station, a concrete cell swallows her, the door clanging shut, and she paces, her mind reeling. The janitor's phone buzzes in her pocket, and she answers, Elise's voice cutting through. "It's worse than we thought. The clique's leader is Gerald Kane, Horizon's VP. He's behind this, pulling strings." Lena's breath catches, her fists clenching. Kane, the slick executive she'd trusted, the one who'd smiled at board meetings while plotting her ruin. She's bailed out hours later, Elise's cash springing her, and steps into the night, thinking she's dodged the bullet. But her phone pings, a company-wide memo from Kane, his words a gut punch. "Lena Carter is fired, effective immediately for disgracing Horizon skies. She's a liability we can't afford." The betrayal sinks in, a knife twisting deep. She'd saved the plane, fought off a mob, exposed the rot, and now Kane's turned her into the villain, stripping her empire with a keystroke. The Chicago wind bites, the city lights mocking her, and she stands, her resolve a flickering flame. Travis is cuffed, Brent's down, but Kane's the puppet master, and he's just declared war. She's out, bloodied, betrayed, but not broken. The mob's dispersed, the police are complicit, and her company's slipping away, but she's got fight left. She'll take Kane down, reclaim what's hers, and make them all pay. The night stretches on, the stakes higher than ever, and Lena braces, her eyes burning with a vow to rise again. Hey folks, what's your call on this insanity? Comment number 1 if you're screaming at Kane's backstab, or number 2 if you think Lena's got the grit to crush him. Ever been blindsided by someone you trusted? Spill it below, hit that like button if you're raging for justice, and subscribe to see this showdown explode. Can Lena bounce back from a mob, a frame-up, and a corporate coup, or is Kane's game too deep to beat? Buckle up for the next twist. Lena Carter stands outside the Chicago police station, the night air sharp against her bruised skin, her torn blazer flapping in the wind. Her wrists burned from the cuffs, now gone, her release secured by Elise's swift bail. But Kane's memo still sears her mind, fired from her own airline, branded a disgrace. The city hums around her, headlights streaking past, but she's a statue, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her resolve a steel core. She's beaten Travis, survived a mob, saved a plane, and now Gerald Kane, Horizon's VP, thinks he can steal her empire with a few typed lies. Her phone buzzes, Marcus's name flashing, and she answers, her voice low. "Tell me you've got something." He's breathless, urgent. "Kane's rallying the board. He's got loyalists everywhere, pushing you out. I'm digging, but you need to get to New York now." Lena nods, hailing a cab, the yellow sedan screeching to a stop. She slides in, barking, "Airport," and the driver peels out, the tires humming against the pavement. Her mind races, plotting every move. Kane's the head of the snake, the one shielding Travis's clique, and she'll cut him off at the neck. The cab drops her at O'Hare, the terminal buzzing with late-night travelers, and she boards a red-eye, her new ticket clutched tight. The flight's quiet, the first-class seat a hollow victory, her body aching as the plane lifts off, slicing through the dark toward New York. She lands at JFK at dawn, the sky a bruised purple, and heads straight for Horizon's headquarters, a glass tower piercing the Manhattan skyline. Her heels click against the lobby marble, her blazer a tattered flag, but she storms past security, their protests ignored. She bursts into the boardroom, the long oak table ringed by suits, Kane at the head, his silver hair gleaming, his smirk a blade. "Lena," he says, his voice smooth as oil, "you're not welcome here." The board shifts, eyes darting, some ashamed, others smug. She slams her briefcase on the table, the thud echoing, and locks eyes with him. "You don't get to fire me from my own company." Kane chuckles, leaning back, his fingers steepled. "It's done. You're a liability, a PR disaster. The board agrees." Lena's voice cuts through, sharp and unyielding. "You're a traitor, Gerald. I've got proof." She pulls a USB from her pocket, Marcus's last gift before Chicago, and plugs it into the projector. Audio crackles, Kane's voice spilling out, cold and damning. "Carter's a problem. We bury her, keep the system clean. Travis knows how to handle her kind." Gasps ripple through the room, faces paling, and Lena stands tall, her gaze a torch. "That's your VP, running a racist empire inside Horizon. You're done, Kane." The board erupts, voices clashing, and the chairman, a wiry man named Patel, bangs his fist. "Enough! Kane, explain this." Kane's smirk falters, his eyes narrowing, but he stammers. "It's edited, fake." Lena steps closer, her voice a hammer. "It's real, and I've got more. Resign, or I take this public." The room freezes, the air thick, and Patel nods, his face grim. "Gerald, you're out. Lena's reinstated." Kane's chair scrapes, back, his face a mask of fury, but he storms out, the door slamming behind him. Lena exhales, her body sagging, the board murmuring apologies, their hands raised in surrender. She's back, the queen of Horizon skies, her throne reclaimed. She sinks into a chair, her hands trembling, thinking she's won, the snake's head severed. But then her phone buzzes, Marcus's voice frantic on the line. "Lena, check the news now." She grabs a remote, flipping the boardroom TV on, and the screen flares with chaos. Horizon skies crisis, multiple planes malfunction mid-flight. Her stomach drops, her victory turning to ash. Reports flood in, 5 jets across the country losing power, engines failing, passengers screaming on live feeds. A ticker scrolls. CEO Lena Carter blamed for negligence. The board stares, jaws slack, and Patel mutters, "What the hell?" Lena's mind spins, the pieces crashing together. Kane's loyalists, his final revenge, sabotaging her fleet to frame her as incompetent. Sirens wail outside, news vans swarming the tower, and she stands, her voice steady despite the quake in her chest. "Get me air traffic control. We're fixing this." She grabs a headset, barking orders, her hands shaking as she coordinates with pilots, guiding them to emergency landings. The room buzzes, the board scrambling, phones ringing off the hook. One plane lands in Dallas, then another, in Phoenix, the feeds showing shaking passengers, crying kids, but alive. She's doing it, pulling them out of the fire, her voice a lifeline over the radio. 3 down, 2 to go, and she wipes sweat from her brow, her blazer sleeve tearing further. The last jet touches down in Seattle, the runway lights glinting, and she slumps, her body drained, the board clapping, a weak cheer rising. She's saved them, turned disaster into survival. But the news shifts, a pundit's voice cutting through. Lena Carter's leadership questioned. Is she fit to run Horizon? Her triumph sours, the room falling silent, the weight of the sabotage crushing her. Kane's gone, but his claws are deep, twisting her heroism into failure. The city pulses outside, the sirens a relentless drone, and Lena stands, her resolve flickering but alive. She's beaten the mob, ousted Kane, saved lives, but the war's not over. The public's turning, the company's bleeding, and she's got no time to rest. She'll fight, expose the sabotage, reclaim her name. But the clock's ticking, and the enemy's still out there, waiting to strike. Lena Carter stands in the Horizon Skies boardroom, the glass walls reflecting the Manhattan skyline, her torn blazer a badge of war, her bruised hands clenched at her sides. The air hums with the aftermath of her victory over Gerald Kane, the VP's chair empty, his resignation forced by her damning recordings. The board sits around the oak table, their faces a mix of relief and unease, the chairman Patel nodding as he mutters, "You're back in charge, Lena." Her reinstatement feels like a crown reclaimed, heavy but hers, the weight of the past hours, Travis's ambush, the mob, the sabotaged plane, lifting slightly. She's beaten the odds, saved her airline from Kane's racist clique, and she lets herself breathe. The coffee on the table cold but untouched. Her phone buzzes, Marcus's name flashing, and she answers, her voice steady. "What's the damage?" He's frantic, words tumbling out. 5 planes all sabotaged, engines cut mid-flight. Kane's loyalists did it, revenge before he bolted. News is pinning it on you. Her stomach twists, the room tilting, and she grabs the remote, flipping the TV on. The screen blares, Horizon Skies in crisis, CEO Lena Carter's negligence endangers thousands. Footage rolls, passengers sobbing, planes wobbling on runways, a pundit snarling, "She's unfit to lead." The board shifts, eyes darting, Patel's jaw tightening. Lena's mind races, the sabotage a gut punch she should have seen coming. Kane's not just out, he's torching her empire on the way down. She slams the remote down, the crack echoing, and turns to the board. "Get me air traffic control now. We're landing those planes." Her voice is steel, cutting through their panic, and they scramble, phones lighting up, assistants rushing in. She grabs a headset, her hands trembling but sure, and patches into the first pilot, a woman named Torres in Dallas. "Torres, talk to me," Lena says, her tone a lifeline. "Engines are sputtering, 10,000 feet, Torres replies, her voice tight. Lena leans in. "Switch to auxiliary, drop speed, aim for DFW, I'm with you." Torres grunts, the radio crackling, and minutes later, "Touchdown, safe." Lena exhales, 1 down, 4 to go. She moves to Phoenix, then Atlanta, her voice steady over the static, guiding each pilot through the chaos, her blazer sleeve tearing further as she gestures. The board watches, Patel scribbling notes, the room a hive of tension. 3 planes land, passengers alive, and she wipes sweat from her brow, her wrists throbbing. The 4th in Minneapolis touches down, the pilot's thank you a whisper in her ear. The last jet over Seattle fights hardest, its engines dead. The pilot, Chen, panting, 5,000 feet, gliding. Lena grips the headset. "Flaps down, nose up, you've got SeaTac, you can do this." The line crackles, then cheers, erupt. "We're down." She slumps, the board clapping, a ragged cheer rising. She's done it, saved 5 planes, thousands of lives, her hands shaking as she pulls off the headset. The TV shifts, a reporter praising miracle landings, Horizon CEO steps up, and she thinks she's turned it, reclaimed her name. But the door bangs open, Kane storming in, his suit rumpled, his silver hair wild, a gun in his hand, its barrel glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You'll never belong," he roars, his voice a thunderclap, the board ducking under the table. Lena's heart stops, her body frozen, but instinct kicks in. She dives, the shot ringing out, a bullet punching the wall where her head was. She rolls, grabbing a chair and hurls it, the legs cracking his shin. He stumbles, cursing, and she lunges, kicking the gun from his grip, the metal skidding across the floor. Patel scrambles for it, shouting, "Security!" as Kane swings a fist, clipping her jaw. Pain flares, but she drives her elbow into his gut, dropping him to his knees. Police burst in, their boots pounding, and cuff him, dragging him out as he spits. "This isn't over." Lena stands, her jaw throbbing, the board emerging, their faces pale. She's won again. Kane's gone for good, and she wipes blood from her lip, thinking she's safe. But her phone pings, a video link from Marcus, and she opens it. The screen, flaring with shaky footage. Her kicking Kane, edited to look like an unprovoked assault, the headline screaming, "Horizon CEO attacks executive." The board gasps, Patel muttering, "What the hell?" As news vans swarm outside, sirens blaring, the crowd below boos, their chants rising through the glass. "Carter's a thug! Fire her!" Lena's stomach drops, her triumph souring, into a trap. Kane's loyalists leaked it, twisted her defense into a smear, and the public swallowing it whole. She saved planes, ousted a traitor, but now she's the villain again. The room spinning as the board stares. Their trust fraying. Her hands clench, her resolve a flickering flame. Travis is locked up, Kane's down, but the clique's reach is a hydra, growing new heads. She's back in charge, but the company's bleeding, the public's turning, and she's got no time to rest. The sirens wail, the city pulses, and Lena braces, her eyes burning with a vow to fight on. Lena Carter stands in the Horizon Skies boardroom, her bruised jaw throbbing, her torn blazer hanging like a battle flag, the air thick with the aftermath of Gerald Kane's arrest. The police have dragged him out, his gun confiscated, his threats still echoing, but the leaked video twists her victory into a noose, her kicking Kane, edited to paint her as a thug, now viral, the public's boos rattling the glass walls. The board sits stunned, Patel's face grim, the TV blaring. Horizon CEO's brutality sparks outrage. Her hands tremble, the welts on her wrists pulsing, but she's not done. She saved 5 planes, thousands of lives, ousted a racist, traitor, and she'll be damned if Kane's final jab buries her. Marcus bursts in, his tie loose, his laptop clutched tight. "Air traffic control's online," he says, breathless, shoving a headset into her hands. "They need you now." Lena nods, slipping it on, her voice steady despite the quake in her chest. "This is Carter. Status? A controller, voice taut, crackles through. All 5 planes are grounded, but we've got reports of more glitches. We need your eyes." She grabs Marcus's laptop, pulling up flight data, her fingers flying. Over the keys. "Patch me to the pilots," she says, and the line shifts, a chorus of voices flooding in, panicked but alive. She talks them down, one by one, her tone a lifeline. "Dallas, reroute power, land at Love Field. Seattle, drop altitude, you've got Boeing Field." Her hands shake, blood smearing the keys, but she keeps going, hours blurring into a relentless rhythm. The last plane touches down in Miami. The pilots were safe, a whisper in her ear, and she rips off the headset. The boardroom silent, the board staring, jaws slack. She's done it again, pulled Horizon from the brink, her body screaming, but her mind razor sharp. The TV shifts, a reporter praising, "Carter's heroic saved thousands," and she thinks she's turned it, the tide shifting back. She wipes sweat from her brow, her blazer sleeve shredding further, and turns to Patel. "Get me a press conference now." He nods, scrambling, and within an hour, she's outside the tower, a podium thrust before her, cameras flashing, the Manhattan wind biting her face. Reporters swarm, mics jabbing, their voices a cacophony. "Why'd you attack Kane? Are you fit to lead?" Lena grips the podium, her knuckles white, and leans in, her voice booming over the crowd. I'm Lena Carter, owner of Horizon Skies. Gerald Kane ran a racist network in my company, targeted me, sabotaged our planes. I stopped him, saved lives. And this, she holds up her phone, the unedited video Marcus dug up playing, Kane lunging. With the gun, her defending herself, is the truth. The crowd hushes, screens flickering as the footage spreads, gasps rippling through. She lays it bare, every detail. Travis's ambush, the mob, the sabotage, her fight to land the planes. Kane's gone, his clique's exposed, and I'm still standing, she says, her eyes blazing. The reporters scribble, phones buzzing, and the mood shifts, murmurs of awe replacing jeers. A woman in a trench coat shouts, "You're a hero!" And others nod, applause breaking out, a wave she didn't expect. She exhales, her body sagging, thinking she's won, the public's rage turning on Kane. Marcus rushes up, his laptop open, streaming live X posts. Carter's the real deal. Kane's the monster. She's done it, flipped the script, her name cleared in real time. The board emerges, Patel clapping her shoulder. Stocks climbing, and she feels the crown settle back, heavier but hers. But then Kane storms. The stage, his cuffs gone, his suit wrinkled, his silver hair wild, a gun back in his hand, snatched from a distracted cop. "You'll never belong," he roars, his voice a thunderclap, the crowd screaming as he aims. Lena's heart stops, her reflexes firing, and she ducks, the shot grazing her arm, blood blooming on her sleeve. She lunges, her heel slamming his wrist, the gun clattering away, and tackles him, pinning him to the podium, her knee on his chest. Police swarm, yanking him up, cuffing him tight, his snarls fading as they drag him off. She stands, blood dripping, the crowd cheering, a roar of triumph she barely hears. She's won, Kane's down, the truth's out, and she wipes her lip thinking it's over. But her phone pings, a new video link, and she opens it, her stomach dropping. It's her again, the tackle edited to look savage, her pinning Kane now. A violent outburst, the headline screaming, "Carter assaults again." The crowd shifts, boos rising, a man in a cap shouting, "She's a brute!" Lena's jaw drops, her victory souring into a trap. The police hesitate, then grab her, cuffs snapping back on her wrists, the metal cold against her welts. "You're under arrest," an officer mutters, his voice flat, and she's hauled off, the crowd jeering, cameras flashing. She's saved. Lives exposed Kane, reclaimed her airline. But the clique's final twist has flipped it all, her heroism smeared into villainy. The squad car peels out, the city blurring past, and Lena sits, her hands bound, her mind racing. Travis is locked. Up, Kane's caught, but their network's alive, spinning lies faster than she can fight. She's cuffed again. The public's turned and her empire's teetering, but she's not broken. She'll prove it, tear down the last of them, and rise once more. The sirens wail, the night closes in, and Lena braces, her resolve a fire that won't die. Lena Carter sits in a packed Manhattan courtroom, her wrists cuffed anew, the metal biting into the scabs from her earlier battles, her torn blazer replaced by a gray jumpsuit that chafes her bruised skin. The gallery buzzes, reporters jostling. For seats, cameras trained on her like vultures circling a kill. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair pulled tight, bangs her gavel, the crack silencing the room, her voice sharp. "Order. Case of Horizon Skies versus Lena Carter, assault and endangerment, begins now." Lena's jaw tightens, her eyes fixed on the bench, the weight of the past days crashing down. Travis's ambush, Kane's sabotage, the mob, the planes, the press conference all twisted into this. Her cuffed again. The public's cheers turned to jeers by a leaked video framing her as a savage. The prosecutor, a wiry man named Hargrove with a pinched face, strides forward, his suit crisp, his voice dripping with disdain. "Lena Carter is a violent fraud," he declares, pointing at her. "A woman who assaulted Gerald Kane, endangered thousands, and hid behind a fabricated tale of racism to save her crumbling empire." He clicks a remote, the screen flaring, with the edited footage. Her tackling Kane, her knee on his chest, looped to look unprovoked, the crowd's boos echoing in her ears. She's unfit, a danger, and this court will prove it. he finishes, his smirk ablaze. Lena's lawyer, Elise, stands, her heels clicking, her voice steady. Objection, Your Honor. That video's manipulated. My client acted in self-defense, saved lives, and exposed a conspiracy. The judge nods. Noted. But Hargrove scoffs, piling on witnesses, passengers from the flight. Their testimony a chorus of lies. The red sweater woman sniffles. She scared us all. The trucker hat guy grunts. She had a knife. Each word a brick in the wall closing her in. Lena's chest tightens, her hands flexing against the cuffs, but she stays silent, her eyes burning. She's faced worse, built Horizon from nothing, and she'll fight this too. Elise counters, calling Marcus, who strides in, his tie straight, his laptop glowing with data. Lena saved 5 planes, he says, his voice firm, showing flight, logs, radio transcripts, the boardroom audio of Kane's confession. The gallery murmurs, heads tilting, but Hargrove twists it. She caused the crisis, then played hero. The trial drags, hours bleeding into days. The prosecution's case, a mountain of distortions, Lena's resolve a flickering flame. She saved lives, ousted Kane, but the room's against her, the public's rage a tidal wave. Then Marcus takes the stand again, his face taut, and drops a bomb. Kane's clique hacked Lena's identity years ago, he says, plugging. A drive into the projector. Files flash, forged complaints, fake IDs, a trail of sabotage pinning her for their crimes. They framed her, long before this flight. The gallery gasps, reporters scribbling, and he clicks again. A hidden camera feed from Kane's cell, live-streamed, his voice rasping. Carter was the target all along. We wanted her gone, her kind out. The room erupts, the judge banging, her gavel. Hargrove's face paling as the truth spills out. Lena's heart leaps, her breath catching, the cuff suddenly lighter. Elise seizes it, her voice soaring. This proves my client's innocence, Your Honor. She's the victim, not the villain. The judge leans forward, her eyes narrowing, and calls a recess, the room buzzing as she retreats. Lena sits, her hands trembling, hope clawing through the dark. Hours later, the judge returns, her gavel cracking once more. Evidence reviewed, she says, her voice steady. Charges against Lena Carter are dismissed. She's free. The cuffs snap off, the gallery erupting in cheers, reporters shouting, "Hero exonerated!" Lena stands, her legs shaky, the jumpsuit peeling away as Elise hands her a blazer, her empire's logo stitched on the breast. She steps outside, the sun blinding, the crowd roaring her name, cameras flashing, Horizon stock ticker soaring. On screens, up 50 points. She's won, cleared her name, torn down Kane's lies, the world seeing her for who she is, the queen who built Horizon, the woman who wouldn't break. But she's not done. She turns to Marcus, her voice low. I'm selling it. His jaw drops. What? She nods, her eyes glinting. Horizon's clean now. I'm cashing out, funding a racial justice foundation. This fight's bigger than planes. He stares, then grins. You're unreal. She walks to a podium, the press swarming, and announces it, her voice booming. I'm stepping away, turning Horizon into a force for change. Kane's empire burns today. The crowd cheers louder, fists raised, and she steps back, her blazer, crisp despite the tears, her wrists scarred but free. She's flipped the script, turned pain into power, and the world's with her, the city pulsing with her triumph. But as she turns to leave, a shadow moves in the crowd, a familiar figure slipping through. Travis Monroe, his cuffs gone, his blonde hair glinting, his eyes locked on her with a vow of revenge. Lena freezes, her victory souring, her heart pounding. He shouldn't be free, not after the plane, the knife, the chaos, but he is. The clique's last gasp, a ghost she can't kill. He vanishes into the throng, the cheers drowning her dread, and she stands, her resolve a steel wall. She's exonerated, victorious, but the war's not over. Travis is out there, hunting, and she'll be ready. The city roars, the future looms, and Lena braces, her fire unquenched. Lena Carter's journey in this gripping tale offers profound lessons about resilience, systemic bias, and the power of truth. First, her story teaches us that strength isn't just physical. It's the unyielding will to fight back against injustice, even when the odds stack high. Lena faced relentless racism, Travis's aggression, Kane's betrayal, a mob's fury, yet she never broke, proving that inner resolve can outlast any storm. Second, it exposes how deeply prejudice can root itself in systems, from airline crews to corporate boards, showing that individual acts of hate often hide bigger, uglier networks. Lena's battle wasn't just against one man, but a web of complicity that tried to erase her. Third, the tale underscores the importance of evidence and allies. Without Marcus's recordings and Elise's defense, her truth might have stayed buried under lies. It's a reminder to document, to speak, to find those who'll stand with you. Finally, Lena's choice to sell Horizon and fund a justice foundation flips the script on victory. Sometimes winning isn't holding power but redirecting it to heal wounds. Her story isn't just about surviving racism, it's about dismantling it, brick by brick. So, what's the takeaway? Courage can rewrite narratives, but it's a fight that demands everything: smarts, grit, and a refusal to bow. Lena's triumph, shadowed by Travis's escape, warns us that justice is a marathon, not a sprint. What do you think? Could you face a storm like Lena's and come out swinging? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button if her fire inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of unbreakable spirits. Share this if you believe truth can topple tyrants, and let's keep pushing for a world where no one's judged by their skin. Thanks for joining this wild ride. Here's to resilience, justice, and a future where every voice soars.